gentlemen, this is Hollywood Matt Connelly. Welcome to the show with the double biceps. It is in the contract and legal requirement every single time we appear on camera.
I can't get them up. There you go.
There it is. We got there. That's my favorite part of the show. Just making sure the lawyers are happy. It is in the contract. It must be done. I was in the fine print. I didn't see it. I didn't read the contract well enough. And there it was. They showed me afterwards. So no, double biceps every single time you appear. So that's what has to happen. And that has happened today. We saw one there and we saw another one there. This is the whole show. It's just me doing that. So let me introduce my amazing guests. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, the Count of Monte Cristo, the co-wearer of clothes, the co-breather of air, the co-founder of AWE. It is the winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year award. It is none other than Greg's disappeared. He's given it up. The intro was too much for him. He's back.
I did. You guys kicked me off. It was biceps. You weren't impressed. Kicked me off. So man, that guy doesn't train enough. So
I'm only halfway through the intro of Dave as well. By the way, the winner of the Stockbridge of the Year award, the inaugural award. He's won 26 years in a row, and did lose it a couple of years to who did you lose it to, Dave?
Vince Colosimo and
right.
And Vincent Ronaldo. So yeah, you got to. Yeah, anybody whose name is Vincent seems to have an unfair advantage when it comes to taking away that title. But yeah, they were difficult times.
They were. So it is in fact your friend and mine. It is Dave Stockbridge. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for that very warm welcome.
We've got these intros going to look so much shorter now compared to that. I've been practicing that one for years. So, but it is the amazing everyone's favorite arm wrestler, I believe. It is none other than the Chocolate Thunder himself, Jody Williams. Look out! There we go. The double forearm pose, fantastic, awesome. And the owner, the CEO, the man who's making big waves in the arm wrestling world, and not only the arm wrestling world, but he has some big news and some big interesting things that he's been getting up to lately. So busy, he was unable to make it there last week, which we completely understand. Once you start telling people the stuff you've been up to, I think they will go, okay, that's fair enough. He didn't want to get on a podcast and talk to some guy that wants to just continuously be doing this. It is none other than the World Series of Armwrestling owner. It is Gregg Sharp.
I appreciate that, guys. Hey, listen, now, first and foremost, with all sincerity, it was an oversight on my end last Friday. The world of media, the world of value in terms of arm wrestling starts and actually ends a lot in podcasts. And to not be responsive enough last Friday, and there's no excuse. Anybody who looked at my social media and saw that I went to the Holiday Bowl with my daughter, it was an oversight, and it was an embarrassing oversight. But the reality is that you guys are really the lifeline and the heartbeat of this sport, and getting the message out to the arm wrestling community is so important to be on time and responsive, not only as a promoter, but certainly to podcasts and people like yourself that putting us in the limelight. And I sincerely apologize. And if the bicep threw me a little bit the last couple of times, Matt, you got to throw me a bone. I mean, the double peaks on your arm, are kind of like a Chris Bumstead-ish look. I'm 54, right? I mean, it's, the only thing I resemble anymore is the Danish and the coffee that I drank this morning and ate before my walk. But that's all right. I'm good to go with that.
It's so good to have you on the show, man. And yes, World Series of Arm Wrestling. For people who don't know the promotion, you're doing tremendous things for the sport of arm wrestling, and sort of literally probably the biggest prize pool in arm wrestling going around in the world, I would say. Your tournaments, your structure that you've got, I think you gave over $100,000 of prize money away last year, and you're looking at over $250,000 for 2025, as well as the different shows and network TV deals, and you're doing some amazing things, mate.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll just make some clarification. We're gunning for 250,000. We're not quite there. We did pick up 3 big sponsors over the holidays. in any business, there's a growth factor and really a timeline in which you become solvent. And I think we closed in season 3, and we're almost, what I would be called. And listen, it's business, so I don't mind chatting about it. But we're coming up into that break even and beyond place in our business cycle, which is great, right? I mean, we made the investment for the first couple of years. Our prize money is going to go up again season 4. We're adding another regional in season 4. We have more sponsors in season 4. So all of the things that, are stabilization to our company that, if we don't get any better, which we will, but if the answer was, we don't get any better with the relationships that we've made, we certainly see ourselves, translating into seasons 8, 9, and 10 with very little, if any, financial difficulties that we would need more sponsors or more, value. But, as a good business, we're adding that. So, the timeline is very solvent. We use that word solvent a lot in business, but what it really means is that, the good thing is we're not going anywhere. And if we continue to, keep that timeline and those steps within our boundaries, I think really good things will be happening again this year and for the next several years. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, Dave, does that excite you as a businessman to be able to hear that these things are happening in the arm wrestling world over in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the wisdom there really is that you've already made allowance for that time that time where, so I'm just going to turn my sound down on this. So there we go. For the last couple of years, you've not made a lot of money, but you had the foresight to understand that that's not really where it's at. It's about building something that's stable, get those foundations laid correctly, build those relationships so that if you're still around in 5 years' time, you're in a good place, and you're in a good place where you're then exploring bigger and better opportunities. Not enough promotions look beyond that first event or two, and so don't last much longer than those as well. So it's great to see that at World Series you guys have got a plan. And I guess I'd like to ask Greg, what made you think, okay, I've got a fortune over here. Let's see if I can make it a smaller fortune by investing into an arm wrestling promotion.
Well, I don't drink, so you can't say that I was inebriated one night and somebody bet me. Dave, it's interesting. I think, coming out of COVID and a lot of people know or may not know, I own a construction company and I have some pretty decent values of business that I have on the side, which, when your kids grow up, you have an opportunity to kind of explore a lot of other things that may not have been, as forthright in terms of time that you had. And so we saw the decline of Wall, and that's not a dig at Wall at all. We saw the decline. We saw an opening in the world of sports, in our sport, and having an opportunity to marry entertainment with arm wrestling. Always look at something and say, okay, it's happened now for 50, 60 years. We've never seen really a breakthrough per se on any kind of longevity. Why is that, right? Is it because we rely on entry fees? Is it because we don't have a platform to be seen outside of arm wrestling? Do we have those intangibles that are missing that continue to elude everybody? And I just said, you know what, maybe I have a leg up here. Maybe, let's not look at how many entry fees, although entry fees are important, right? We need arm wrestlers. It's the backbone. Let's look at how do we take what we have and package it? How do we put it to a place where nobody sees it, which are the streaming platforms? How do we look to expand that? And that's by creating our own channels. How do we look to, remunerate that in terms of, ancillary type relationships? That's the betting platform we're going to. And now, how do we then take, the 70, 80,000 avid, watchers of arm wrestling across the world, and it's not that much bigger than that number. Although we could say, there are countries that have millions and millions of people that love arm wrestling. But when you look at that core number of people that are really buying or being active, they're looking at a fairly small number. So how do we take that number and increase it? And I think that's been the game plan for me, Dave. And we've had good turnouts at tournaments. So we've had some, scratch the head. Do we really want to come back to this area again? Type, situations in which we've given them a couple different chances. But ultimately, the goal is not to just capture that active 70, 80,000 people that might buy a pay-per-view, might buy a T-shirt, might enter into your tournament. It's now to get into the millions of people that are looking for something to do outside of what they normally do in the world of perhaps gambling, in the world of perhaps reality series, and bring those people to our sport. Because without that, arm wrestling is fast, right? I mean, you're looking at one of the fastest guys from the start here to my left corner. I don't know which way it is on your screens. But Jody Williams off the start, if you're not listening for the G and you hear the O, you're already done, especially with his left hand, right? So, how do you take a sport that really has no viewer appeal, right? I mean, the actual event, if you look at arm wrestling, with the exception of maybe the advent of some of these better super matches that we've seen that are matched up a little bit better and have a little bit more timeline on the table, how do you take something that's instantaneous and make it interesting for someone outside of us? Yeah. And that's really been the goal. I mean, there's not a lot of secrets to that. And a lot of people try to, persuade me to add more weight classes or do things this way or do things that way. But the answer is that what we really need to do as a sport, if we want to become mainstream, and my opinion only, everybody has an opinion on mainstream, but if we really want to become mainstream, we have to get away from the people that we service on a daily, hourly, minutely basis on social media and start servicing those people that have never heard of us and never have seen us other than on a quirky commercial or, on maybe and not to say that being on the NFL Network, it wasn't great for the sport with Travis, but most people see that and forget about it. How do we continue to be in front of them? So I think that's, where I thought that this, World Series of Arm Wrestling could really grow and maybe have a chance to become mainstream. And I think the real testimonial to being mainstream is, do we have atypical viewers and can we be seen on platforms that are atypical to the sport, prior to us? I think the answer is yes. Have we bridged the gap to sponsors that typically don't, sponsor this kind of sports because of its nicheness or nicheness, however you want to say it? And I think the answer is yes. And then the last thing is, how do we grow it? And with the advent of the betting platform, and a lot of people are interested in how we're going to roll that out. But with the advent of that, and now being able to take the average person who's watching a college football game, a college basketball game, betting on the Lakers, betting on the Sixers, betting on the Rangers in hockey, betting on soccer, whatever they're betting on, how do we get them now to bet on us and watch us? And I think the millions of people that physically bet and want something to bet on are going to slowly, start to, travel to us. And that's where the real growth is. And if we do it right by season 5, I mean, the rollout season 4 is the biggest thing, right? I mean, I hesitated rolling it out in season 3 because we weren't ready. So the rollout in season 4 is our biggest testimonial date on 2 things: getting the betting platform in front of everybody, as well as now creating a live value of an event. Because in order to bet, we're going to have to go live, right? Nobody wants to wait till season 4 comes out next spring to wonder if they won their bet or not, right? Mm. So we're going to evolve here in season 4 into a live stream event that will not only be taken on Free Live Sports, which is the largest global platform where Inside Arm Wrestling channel is at now, where not tens of millions, but hundreds of millions of sports people go every month. Then we take it to a betting platform at BetSpark, and we put in the bracket so people can pari-mutually bet. And what that means is that those who've never gone to a horse race. A parimutuel pool is a group of people that have been listed in terms of going to compete. So if the four of us are competing, and we start on a one-to-one basis, the first dollar in will sway the odds, right? So the odds start moving by the amount of money that's bet on any one person within. So if Jody takes $100 and Matt takes $50 and Dave, you take $25, Jody may be the 1-5 favorite to start. I may be a 50-1 favorite to start. So as the money, like in a horse race, continues to go into the parimutuel handle, and it's called a handle, then all of a sudden the odds will change. And then we can bet on, what they call exactas. Okay, maybe I bet that Jody's going to win first, and Matt's going to win second. Okay, maybe I'm going to do a trifecta. I'm going to go Jody, Matt, Gregg. Okay, a $2 trifecta, Jody, Matt, Gregg, and there'll be odds on that. We could do superfectas. Okay, pick sixes. There's an unlimited amount of betting and wagering we can bring in on a parimutuel end on a tournament value which we have, which I think makes this thing really great because we ultimately become a horse race, right? We become our own horse racers, and where the value is that we control a portion of that profit as a sponsor coming back to us, and that helps build the pools for years and years to come. I mean, a strong parimutuel showing, guys, in my opinion, can turn World Series of Armwrestling from the $100,000 mark to the $500,000 mark within 2 seasons. There's no doubt about it, because we're not now asking the people within our industry to gamble. We're asking people outside. Listen, they're gambling is a serious thing. There's a lot of people with addictions that are in a bad frame of mind with gambling, but there are a lot of people that want something to gamble on, whether it's a flip of a coin, whether or not Jody Williams is going to come in with a Beaver shirt on, Riverside. There's so many gimmick bets that we can do that it's unlimited, right? We can set up contest polls. We could set up any kind of parlays. We're going to set up. And here's the thing. I could be the king of the sandbox and say, you know what, we're the only one to do it. And that's not going to happen. What I am doing is saying, if you want to come on board, we're giving you an open door to come on, share the revenues in terms of your promotion coming on with ours underneath our umbrella. And you're going to be able to also finance or financially become better for your own tournament. So if Jody's running a tournament in June and he wants to do a parimutuel pool with us, he's more than welcome to do it. And depending upon the handle, maybe 6,000 people, gamble, and there's a $1,500 take. I mean, Jody's going to enjoy a part of that. So these little things in gambling create a bigger spectrum for us, as well as it creates a bigger growth in our social media platform, which then we take back to the sponsors and we show them disaggregated growth. And that in turn allows us to get more money, right? And so once you start to understand that snowball and you start it rolling, you roll it into an area that has a lot of snow, by hook or by crook, you're gonna grow, right? And I think we started in that route, which makes this thing immeasurably valuable to us as a community. And I really believe that if we do this right, being a mainstream sport, and again, that word mainstream is out there. And I think the defining factors we went over, but making this a mainstream sport is predicated on us being able to do this and do this well. And listen, even for, and Matt, I kind of alluded to this before, getting on Inside Arm Wrestling on the channel, we want content. We want this podcast to come on. We want to be able to give you, listen, I'm not going to secretly, promote something that's not in front. We pay 7 cents to every 10 cents earned. You make 70% of the revenue that we generate on your show at any given time. We take 30 as a distribution company in Inside Arm Wrestling. You don't have to have 5 subscribers. You don't have to have 5 million subscribers. You just have to have content that people want to see. And we're going to put it out there on what's called an EPG, which is a channel guide. We're going to rotate, put you on the right times. And it's a growth factor. So the more we do these things, the more we offer these things. And it's not a selfish thing. It's selfless because at some point at 54, somebody's going to have to take the reins at some point down the road from me. But we have to build, and it can't be Gregg's got it all in his pocket, and you have to kiss the ring and say Godfather or whatever. I mean, it's not. There are guys out there like they get a little bit of something, and they think that proprietarily they just created sliced bread, and they realize that Wonder and Elasio or whatever have been doing it for years, and then all of a sudden that little bit of sharing that they could have done that would have made them even valuable, they lost that opportunity. So I think that's the growth factor. I think that's the big thing for our sport to make it a changeable sport. Otherwise, I think we can go another 60, 70 years and still not make a turn if we continue to do just the things we do, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
At what point did you come around this formula or this way of thinking? Was there a tipping point, or was there an interaction or a moment where all of a sudden you went, you know what, part of the secret sauce here has to be gambling, it has to be a TV channel, it has to be these things. Was there, or has this just been chipping away at it, and over time these realizations coming to you until it's coalesced into its existing plan?
Well, I think, Dave, I would say it's from the start, and people, you putting the right pieces together always takes time, right? To say that I didn't have a plan from the start would be remiss of me, because I don't do anything without a plan. I understood from the get-go that I had to get this on a platform and streaming, which takes time. I understood that we had to get outside of the atypical viewer, which would be putting us on that platform, and gambling, which took time. Not everything I have had to lay out to everybody, because certainly getting there first is a value, right? I mean, there's a value to being the first one there, and hopefully that value is that we're leading the way with integrity, with good ethics. We've showed ourselves as a value out there. And Jody, I'll get right with you, but give me a second to finish my thought. And then when we do it, we can show those people that it's doable to those values outside of arm wrestling, because many of them have been burned. I can't tell you how many sponsors I've talked to and TV execs and everybody else that have said, "Hey, man, you know what? You guys in arm wrestling, it's a small niche sport, and we just don't want to take the shot because we've been burned. We've had knuckleheads in front of us before who've had great deals that have walked away or have ruined them. We're just not interested right now. Now we're at least in the conversation that they're interested, right? They're back to being interested. And I think that helps everyone as a community." Jody, I'm sorry. I know you had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering. It's echoing. What exactly are you using to make these bets? So, like, for example, if people want to bet and the match against Matt and myself, like, are they using like name recognition, or what exactly are you using to get these bets to kind of go through? Does that make sense?
I think so, because I've had some emails, so I'm assuming that you're predicating that call maybe from somebody else. But the reality
I was kind of curious.
The reality is that the site itself creates odds in gaming, and it's based upon data within the system on betting trends, right? So we're not opening up head-to-head betting quite yet, because we're going to start tabulating our results with WSA in terms of, who is competed, where do they rank, and then it's the end user that's going to bet. And that betting line, just like if, Ohio State versus Oregon today, right? The more money one side takes, the less the betting line becomes, right? If Ohio State takes $1 million worth of action day one, right? Where does the line go? Does the line stay at 110, minus 110, or does it go to minus 300, right?
Right.
Does Oregon then go from 150 to 500, right? Plus, so the gambling site are the algorithmic partners that will create that. Now, be it, I have a lot of friends in the gambling industry, right? Obviously, Bally's is one of my partners. I have a good friend there. I've got a lot of friends in the Vegas area that are sportsbook gamblers and sportsbook odds makers. There are BetSmarket has all of these assets. So all our value is right now is to load up and let people go. However, there are, and guys, this is why this is important for me. A lot of people, gave me a little bit of backlash on what's the word I want to say? Banning Caleb. Unfortunately, Caleb had some problems over here on the tournament. We banned the gentleman because of what had happened. But the reason why we did it is because on a gambling platform, you can't tolerate that kind of action, right? That, you can't have people that could potentially sway bets illegally. And there will be an oversight on how people compete, right? You can't have Jody Williams knowing that he's the odds-on favorite going on against Gregg in the finals, and Jody lays down, right? Because obviously there's a problem. So there's going to be oversight on a lot of this. And this is not a conversation that articulates out well within an hour. These guys do this professionally, right? The BetSmarket guys didn't pop up yesterday and say, Gregg, we want you to be on our platform. These guys have been in business for a while. And there are going to be factors and controls that are going to that was pretty cool. Honestly, Matt, you got to give me a little high sign or something, because I thought that we actually lost, or I lost you again. I was like, wow, I think I got outside of the podcast.
Yes,
They're going to have controls on there. And listen, if we find people cheating, right, or we find people that are creating a value of deception, we're going to ban them, right? I mean, Pete Rose was banned from baseball for betting, right? And that doesn't mean that he didn't go out and sign a lot of autographs and kiss a lot of babies elsewhere. It doesn't mean that he wasn't the greatest hitter of all time. But the reality is, if we find cheaters within the mix, we have to have integrity, and we have to move them out. If we find people that are creating problems within our community and are actively doing it, we have to move them out. We really have to be the shining light. And I hate to put that pressure on us, but we have to do it better than everyone else could potentially to make sure it lasts. Because the first time there's an issue, if there's not a track record of success behind it, they're just going to kick us off, right? There's no value. I wake up in the morning and I look at what I do for a living, and let's say somebody comes to me and says, hey, I got this business opportunity over here, and it's this, and this. I said, well, it's kind of sketchy. Why do I want to take that shot? I'm just gonna dismiss it. Same thing with a betting platform, right? If they find that the world of arm wrestling lacks integrity, if they find that the world of arm wrestling doesn't bring a value that interests people, that they feel they can wager on something fairly, they're not going to use us, and it's going to ruin any opportunity to bring it back in the future. So we have to predicate in many ways as the policeman. We have to do it well. We have to have an oversight, and certainly we want to be able to do that to make sure that we get past 2025, and in 2026, 27, 28, there's millions of dollars being bet on arm wrestling, and there's a real interest to bring this sport out.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that in America you have a much more much more deregulated gambling market than here in Australia. Our big issue with having the sport, having punters bet on arm wrestling in Australia is unless the sport is sanctioned, there's a lot of money involved in terms of the structure of the sport and the association that's managing the sport. All of those things, it's very, very difficult for them to view you as a legitimate sport. And with the amount of money that could easily be punted on, it could be really easy for somebody to lie down and take some in the back pocket on the way out the door. So they're very, very conscious of that here, and that's been one of our big hurdles in moving in that direction in Australia, but it's great that opportunity is available to you in America.
Well, but Dave, you do bring in some validity on what the gambling site's going to require. We have to go and register state to state, right? We have to show that we're a legitimate business, right? We have to show that we have the ability to fund and to perform in the way we do. So we have to go through state to state scrutiny in order to become legalized in those areas. So it's not. It's just not signing the agreement. I mean, nothing in life is just as easy as signing an agreement. There's a process. We're going through the registration process. It's a slow, tedious process, but we're ahead of the game far enough that when we're rolling this out, we'll be in a really good position by, our start of our season, if not a little bit sooner, to be able to really make this thing work. But listen. Just like in Australia, if the states are sanctioning this and they find that there's some hanky-panky going on, they have a right to look at criminality, right? You start throwing bets and you start becoming deceptive to the American public or any kind of public, whether the gambling platform you gamble through Canada or wherever you're allowed to come and gamble on through that platform. And there are some geographic restrictions for any platform to be bet on, right? But the states will come in. Listen, if they think that you deceived somebody and you're going to be under investigation. And that's why we don't even want to start with the value of being, potentially having, guys that maybe made some bad decisions in the mix already, because if they make bad decisions for us in the future, that doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't work for me. And again, it shuts down something that has taken quite a bit of time to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Jody, what's your thoughts with competing with World Series of Armwrestling, the tournaments that they've run throughout the years? Your experience going along as a competitor?
My experience has been great. I think if I can, speak on this. Season 2, for example, I think once it does get released, it'll be a change, because now what Gregg said earlier in the show, how do we get the non-viewers of our, to watch our product? And I think it would be more of, hey, let's pick this guy, let's pick Gregg, let's pick Matt, let's pick Jody, pick Steve, Tyrone, whatever, and let's have a backstory on them. You got to have people involved. Like, well, what makes me want to watch Matt? Oh, okay, hey, okay, Matt's Hollywood. What's he do outside of arm wrestling? You got to have something that gets the crowd to latch onto them. Not so much, the bicep, right? Some kind of storyline, And I think that's what is going on forward. Now, as far as the competition, I will say this: we've all cut our teeth in this sport, tournament-wise, right? And I know now a lot of it's moved to super match format, which is good, but it's always nice to see. It's a breath of fresh air where, hey, tournaments is where it's at. I can't tell you guys, and Gregg knows this, I cannot tell you how fun it was to be at the finals this past November. If you saw the array of talent, it was almost like you're at an actual national, And I'm talking, it was a who's who that was there, And I could tell you who was there. Probably can't tell you what they came in, but when you have the Ron Bass there, Corey West, Don Underwood, Robbie Burnett, Danny Gilliam, the list goes on and on. It's like, where do you go, right? Where else are you going to have that kind of talent at a tournament, no less, And I think, year by year, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And remember, some of the people who couldn't make the finals this past year, I assure you they're going to make the finals in 2025. All they got to do is just show up at a qualifier, put your name in the hat, do some damage, and go from there. And was that about right, Gregg, or did I miss anything?
No, I think you're right. Jody, hey, listen, the most frustrating thing, and even for me, who took out a level of middleman by becoming my own distributor. We place these shows on the networks. We go through the normal scrutiny of quality assurance and quality control. They go through the check roll of, does the audio meet the visual? And you go through all of this, and as an independent, because that's what we really are, right? I mean, I'm not Sony, I'm not Paramount, I'm not Lionsgate. As an independent, what we then fight our way out to be released. And it looked like we were going to get released before, well, it looked like we were going to get released at the end of the summer. It got pushed back because the streams that we were looking at, Tubi and Amazon, had an influx of first run attachable movies. Then we got into the fall. Then they went into the Christmas season. And now, the last time we spoke, we actually, given the fact that we should be released again, this next coming week in January. But again, you never know. And that's one of the other reasons why I decided to open up Radiate TV, right? I mean, and listen, again, at some point, if you ask me to challenge myself to fix a problem, I'm going to try to fix it. And by putting our own TV streaming platform together with Radiate and with Inside Arm Wrestling, I won't need to be at some point. That's the reality. And that makes a big difference. The timelines make a big difference. I could easily drop, season 2 on just the Roku channel, but the Roku channel is not going to create any kind of financial bearing for us right now, right? Because we're still building that. So once we get that channel, operating with Free Life Sports, which is the goal is January 6th. Now we have that other platform there that we can start looking at. So it's a constant battle of taking these pieces and making them work. And that's what being, I guess, a business person is all about for me. But Jody, you bring up a great point. The talent level that we had at season 3 finals was off the chart. Listen, I won't, again, we won't tell you who won, but you can add Adam Warinsky in there. You can add Arson in there. Obviously, Vrez is still, to me, the top 176er right now in the nation. I don't know that anybody beats him left and right. To me, he is the GOAT right now, 176. Now, does he compete at 76 a lot anymore? No, but he's still the gatekeeper to me. You had guys come down from Utah that typically don't come down. We had guys from out on the East Coast that came in. Dallas, Fort Worth Regional brought a lot of guys in. Riverside is our bread and butter. It's my backyard, and they showed up again this year. So we are looking to eclipse last year's numbers with athletes. It'd be great if we bring in 175 athletes this year. Even Canada brought us down 2 pullers from Kane Hemsing's Fit Life Sports up there. Or Fit Fight, Sports. So I think if we get to 175, I've already ordered another table. So we'll run 4 tables at the finals. Listen, I would love to be in 2026, 2027, needing 5 or 6 tables because we just have that much volume. But the other thing we do is we try to keep it TV friendly, because the average user isn't going to want to know that you can be a 54, 65, 76, an 85, a 98, a 209. We keep it to 4, right? And not everybody's going to want to compete in that because of the weight, differentials between each weight class. But we have enough people, I think, that see it as a value that are starting to assimilate to what our weight brackets are, and it's just going to keep growing. I mean, we had no less than 16 people in a bracket, I think, and that was the super heavyweights. And to have 16 super heavyweights, compete in any one tournament in North America, that's great. Normally you go to an event and you have 12, 13 people, 76 and unders, right? But this year, our 76 and under, I think we're over 20, 22. 209s were 18 or 19, 239s, 17 or 18 in the pro brackets. And I think that's a true testament of people wanting to compete. And like yourself, Jody, I prefer tournament arm wrestling. There's the one-on-one sport. People argue that that's the way to go mainstream because it creates a different variable or a unique variable for people to enjoy. It's a head-to-head. But you know what? I think still the mark of arm wrestling isn't whether or not you can beat just one person 3 times. I think, can you beat 19 other guys that show up and get through the A or B bracket and get through the final? I think that's the test to show if you're really a good arm wrestler. Now,
well, if I can piggyback on that for a second, and I'll use the WAL to make my argument, and I want everybody in the chat and you three gentlemen to kind of see where I'm going, and feel free to respond. So, I don't mind super matches. I love them, you know. And yes, to find out if you're truly better than the other person, yeah, there's nothing better than the head-to-head. However, what I think, and this is where when WL first came on the scene, it was tournaments, it was regionals, right? Because you always have that outside chance that somebody may come in here and just, pick up the bones and just, manifest their way through because you had two big guns who had to go at it. And it's all about brackets, When you start the tournament, who is where at the bracket, right? And let's be real, when WL went to Supermatch Format Series, at the time it was exciting. At least I thought it was. But after a while, and I'm not, saying anything bad about it because these are the facts, right? After a while, you started seeing regurgitated matches, right? It was the same, how many times, and like I said, when I say this is nothing against the athlete itself, right? Like how many times are we going to see Michael Todd versus Jerry, right? How many times are we going to see Devin versus Michael Todd? So after a while, it kind of gets redundant because, you want to see fresh faces, right? You saw you had fresh faces, but then you didn't see them again. And I understand COVID kind of, put a dent in that. But at least from a tournament standpoint, you're like, oh, okay, well, this is my chance. Whose weekend am I going to wreck today? Some of those favorites now, it's them against the field now, right? Like, for example, I think Travis said this too. LeVon is just kicking everyone's, and we can cuss now, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Are we past that mark? Okay, so so LeVon is just kicking everyone's ass, right? One-on-one. Change the format. If it was some of the top 12 dudes in a tournament format, is LeVon going to walk out of there undefeated?
Yeah, good point.
Right?
well,
He won't walk out anyway. He'll be exhausted.
And listen, I think, Jody, you bring in a good point. It's hard to deny that one-on-one matches bring a quality of value to see who's the best at that table at that moment in time. And listen, we all know that the sport of arm wrestling and super matches are much like bodybuilding. If you fuck up your cycle and you fuck up your cut, you can see we can curse now, right? So you said that. I just want to make sure. I'll bring it in. And you come on stage and you look flat or you're retaining water, on a bodybuilding end, or if you missed your cycle or you didn't plan your cycle well, that's the difference between you winning and losing that day in the super match. I think that, you can look at super matches across the board and probably pinpoint maybe several dozens where you can say, wow, he kind of missed where he should have been, or, something happened with his cycle. The fact is does LeVon lose in the World Series of Arm Wrestling if it comes to America and he pulls in the regional and he competes in the final? The answer is no. There's not anybody out there that's going to touch that guy, right? I don't care if I put the 20 best, that the U.S. has to offer right now. The guy is different. I mean, I sat there front row at King of the Table. He's just different. I mean, and I got to talk to Jerry after the match, and we kind of talked about strategy, and Jerry was a bit upset because he wanted to go in a different lane and didn't. But when you look at the guy who takes away the complete power that the man who's made a career and an illustrious career, and Jerry, a world champion's career, it just took him away. I mean, there was nobody at that show. There was no one. And LeVon could have sat there and did the Guinness World Book of Record, 1,000 people come arm wrestling that guy. There was not one person other than the good Lord, if he made, LeVon need some oxygen, right? There was not anybody that on a one-on-one on any day could have taken LeVon there. Period. The end. So when you look at that, you could say on Levon's end, well, why do I want to pull a tournament when I can make X amount of dollars being the best in the world through super matches? And I get that.
It also opens up the opportunity. I mean, what you've fallen upon is a formula that serves you well, and I think this is a really exciting thing about our sport at the moment is that it whether it's super matches, whether it's a tournament, whether it's 8-man, 16-man, unlimited, whatever it might be, we're all trying to find out the alchemy. But what's really important is what is highly watchable, what is entertaining, not what the purists want, not what they want to see, whether it's a 18-minute setup or whatever. The general public, the people that we want to bring over to the sport, don't care for that yet. But there is a place for it, and in the Anglosphere, we've got cricket and we've got several forms of the game, which would be a little bit like having baseball that was played over, different lengths of time. And we've got a 5-day version of the game, which is Test cricket, and then we've got a 1-day version of the game, and that's surprisingly called a one-dayer, and then we. And then we've got 2020. Now, 2020 cricket is the most watched format, but the purists hate it. But it's done and it's dusted in 2.5 hours. The storylines, everything that needs to be told, and it's action packed. It's the most entertaining form of the game by far, and it's no surprise that it is the one that gets the most eyeballs. But what's happened say 10 years down the track after the introduction of this very, very truncated form of the game is that people are returning. It's making people purists. So people are coming to the sport because of the 2020 game, and they're finding themselves loving the sport and then wanting to go deeper with it. And that's where the other versions of the game lead people. And so I think this is the exciting time. Super matches have a role, but they play a very, very different function to a tournament, and it creates so many variables. One of the things we loved about running a tournament was that it takes us out of competition with any of the other promotions that are running super matches. We're not answering the same questions, and not only that, but when you've got athletes competing in a tournament. If you have athletes competing in a super match, what happens as a result of that super match, how somebody wins or how much buy or what the result is, that directly affects what comes next. So if they had a shock, or if they had a bad day on the table for whatever reason, that could hold their career for months or maybe even a year or two before they can get back to that standard. But with a tournament, somebody can have that bad day, or somebody can lose to a flash pin, and it's of no consequence to what happens next in the world of super matches. So I think you're going to find over time you'll have athletes that are known to be great tournament athletes, and then you'll have those that are maybe only do super matches moving forward. Maybe athletes will cross over between the two, and I guess that'll depend where the attention and where the money finds its way to.
And I agree with you, Dave. I think there's another variable in there that there is this push to everybody doing super matches, right? So when you look at a business, you have to look at something outside the box. If you do what everybody else is doing, you're only going to get what everybody else gets, right? And there's only so much of a pie that you can split in that fact. So doing the tournaments are something that's, believe it or not, been with us forever, as you guys know, but are now unique, right? The whole value of somebody actually winning $10,000 at a tournament. I mean, when's the last time we've really seen that in a tournament fashion? It's been a long time. The other thing I want to say is I think that some ways I think that there needs to be a value of reestablishing super match philosophy. And again, it's not my value. I say this as a fan. I'm not saying this is the World Series of Armwrestling. I'm saying this as a fan. And what I'm trying to say is to Jody's point is that if you lose, I used to own Explode Fight Series. Okay, Explode Fight Series was a great regional MMA promotion out of San Diego. We put more people into the UFC and Bellator in the 5 years that we were effectively operating than any other promotion in the world. Wow. That's a fact. That's not a made up stat. That's a fact. If you look at the athletes that came to Explode Fight Series and you look at the numbers that went from us to the UFC, it's an undeniable place for us that actually created so much resentment because we did it in such an easygoing fashion, because we had consistent events because we look at making sure that all of our athletes have matches. So when we look at that, what's the number one thing that the UFC does that the world championships don't do? They don't retread their fighters. If you lose twice, you got to go back down, right? Unless there's unless you're Vitor Belfort or you're some name that has a tremendous pay-per-view appeal. You lose twice, you lose 3 times, you're back to the regionals, right? And we don't see that as a sport. I mean, we don't see that as arm wrestling. We don't see guys having to go back and reestablish themselves, which is something that I think that you're going to, as a fan, I would like to see on some of these super match platforms, because I think that there's ways to feed and grow, and how we can, visualize World Series being a catalyst for, arm wrestling is that, hey, go back and win World Series of Arm Wrestling. Go back and win a 20, 30, 40-man deep platform and show us that you are the best 209er out there, right? I mean, listen, there's some guys in East versus West and King of the Table that have had multiple losses. There's some guys in there I don't think that could win the World Series of Arm Wrestling. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that they're not vastly popular. That doesn't mean that they don't have a value. But let's put it where it's at. If there's not a pre-qualifying value for you to get your shot, I think that's where the purists start to argue about why they don't like the super matches, right? And then vice versa. I think that you find that, and listen, the Eddie versus Bryan match was every bit electrifying that any match that I've ever seen. And let's be honest, if either of those guys had an extra 6 months worth of arm wrestling, that the match might not have been as entertaining, because they made a lot of basic mistakes that they were able to play off of each other. Had Eddie climbed the hand instead of telling Bryan, "Come on, you big P, are you going to win or not?" Right? Yeah. That would have been a different outcome. But because of their vast and enormous fan base, and because that value that the match went on for the distance of time that it did, it made it very marketable. But the rest of the matches, and listen, Don Dries is a production guru. Him and his staff, I can't tell you how well-oiled they are. They brought in their crew also from the U.S. You had Robert Kelly there. You had Adam Silver there. Kevin, her name is Tina, and Amu was there. I met all of them, and they understand the craft, right? And they understand how to put it together. But most of those matches outside of Bryan and Eddie were, they were quick and they were easy. I mean, there was not a lot of value of entertainment in terms of being there live, because it was very one-sided in most cases. I'll be honest with you, the match that actually was exciting to me was the Lackland match. I mean, because there was a variable of going back and forth. There was adjustments, and that was maybe the second most entertaining match that night, in my opinion. I mean, Matt Mask walked all over, Marcio. Levon walked all over Jerry. And the list goes. Rustam was not going to lose. Not on any day. I mean, these are, these were not really great, head-to-head matchups, in my opinion, as a fan. And I'm not being critical, because the spectacle of being there was great. The production was great. The timing was great. Listen, if I could get Neil Pickup to give me a price to walk around behind me for a month and narrate my life, I would tell you, I would pay it. That man sounds amazing. Like, they see him do his work. I mean, there was an old movie called "I'm Gonna Get You Sucker." It was a Kean Wayans movie, right? And they had BDP behind the main guy, or Kean at the end, and that's my music, right? That's to have Neil Pickup, and Gregg Sharp coming into the match, that would be like the greatest, right? I mean, how do you not like? Listen, I would retire at that point. Get Neil Pickup to narrate my 30 days. I'm done. Somebody can have World Series. But the value of production and the value of entertainment was what carried that. And kudos to Don and King of the Table, because that's all him. Now that Don is out in value of owning King of the Table, and it's Robert Baxter and Engen, we'll see if that production value can continue. I hope it does. We've had conversations back and forth a little bit. I think there's some value for collaboration between us. But we're not going to stop doing what we do, and we don't expect them to stop doing what they do. If there comes a time where there's a value that it makes sense, we'll cross that bridge. But our value is going to still be, how do we become not just where we are now, but how do we get to that mythological 500,000? How do we get to that mythological 1 million? And how do we get people to watch us on a consistent basis? And that's the name of the game for me. That's where my focus is.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about the TV show stuff that you've got going on, the network, and your moves with that.
I know Jody is there. He's watching. Jody, I hesitate because Jody and I are friends, and Jody wants to be in the know, and I love him for it. And I have to kind of. I know, and listen, because I feel bad. I'd love to tell everybody what we have in plan, but then there's no surprise, right? And we got another TV show that's happening here in a different genre in Nashville that we're filming, and all the girls want to know what's going on. It's actually called Behind the Country, which is a franchise name that I put together, and it's the Bottle Service Girls of Nashville. But we've got all of these different things that these bottle service girls are going to experience. It's the whole value of how they handle the growth factor of becoming bottle service girls in an industry that's very affluent. Like bottle service girls, 6 figures or better in the world of high-end bars. So we're documenting that and doing a series. Same with the house. I'd love to tell you all the fun things that we're going to do. I'd love to tell you, some of the scripted things that we're going to do. I had a question from one of the athletes, and we're almost through most of the athletes. We're almost to the end of them. Trying to find out their schedules. But one of the athletes asked us, "Is the arm wrestling real?" And the answer is 100% it's real. We're not scripting any of the arm wrestling. We're not asking anybody to lay down in the arm wrestling. We're not asking anybody to throw a match. The arm wrestling result is the arm wrestling result. Where the value becomes interesting in this show is what they do off the table, right? Because there's 2 components of the show. There's what's on the table and there's what's off the table. And all of that comes in a point system that I'm not going to let anybody know, because that way no one can try to pad somebody this way or that way, or when it comes to picking the teams, they're going to have a better edge to pick. But there's 2 values, and then the finals will be 1 weekend value at Riverside on June 28th. So the show itself is scripted and real. The scripted part will be reactionary part to it, and that's the atypical part. Will Jody Williams be potentially doing some funny, fun things? I already know that between maybe it's Jamie who's afraid of sharks. We won't do surfing. Surfing was something that I thought would be a good event to put the guys in, but Jamie said he won't go in the water and surf because of sharks. Or maybe it was you, Jody. I apologize.
I don't swim, so no.
Okay. Well, there'll be no surfing, right? I mean, no sharks will be harmed in this show. But ultimately, we're gonna have some fun things for these guys to do that. And one of the things I've told the athletes is that there's 2 parts to this. You have to want to be on TV and want to be able to compete, but you also have to be unafraid to be embarrassed, right? And the goal is not to embarrass you, but we are going to put you in some situations that you may fail. You may look foolish. You may look funny. Is that something that affects you in your work? Is that something that's going to affect you in your life? Is your wife not going to be happy that you look foolish on TV? You have to have an open heart. You have to have an open mind to this. And then in value, we're going to build a show that we believe is interesting, and it's a point-based system. And ultimately, that point-based system will be determined Hopefully, it will be determined on June 28th in a winner take all. And there's a chance that one team may end up, winning before it gets to June 28th, but they'll all be on their NDAs, and if they talk, then we'll see. We'll see how that plans out exactly. But the goal is to make it fun, right? The goal is to put something out in front of the viewing public that makes them want to see us as athletes compete on the table, off the table, and be able to genuinely be able to, identify with who we are, and say, you know what, I'm a carpenter, I'm a mechanic, I'm a car salesman, I'm a financial analyst, I'm a corrections officer, I'm a business owner, I'm a social influencer. I'm just like these other guys. How come I don't become an arm wrestler, right? I mean, that might be pretty cool. And so that's listen, I'm laughing all inside myself because I wish I could tell you some of the funny things that I've got ready to film. I wish I could, but then you won't want to watch it.
That's okay. But
I think we all want to watch it. That's fine. I think
absolutely. I would
anybody.
just like to know the story of the TV network and stuff that you're doing, and you're launching like a 24-hour arm wrestling channel, and then there's a whole bunch of other channels and stuff that's going on as well.
I'm going to hop off before you answer that question, Greg. I love everything that you're doing. Well done. Great stuff. Can't wait to hear more. I'm actually going to tune in. I've got to go right now, but I'm going to be jumping straight on the phone and playing this through the car on my way to the next appointment. So I can't wait to hear the answers here. So just want to wish everybody a wonderful 2025, and thanks for having me on. Thanks, gents.
Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely,
Take
David.
care.
Pleasure, my friend.
See you later, buddy.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye. So platform-wise, Inside Arm Wrestling, and again, I'm going to pitch you again, Matt. I want your content. When this thing gets done and it's floating out there in the world of YouTube and these infinite places, let's get you pointed into Inside Arm Wrestling, and let's get you the Matt Connelly Hour or the Matt Connelly Hour and a half. Same with Jody Williams. The Can-Am connection should be on Inside Arm Wrestling. These are very translatable programs that people who are in the world of arm wrestling will want to watch. And it becomes a value to you guys as more people watch. We all get paid on what they call cost per thousand, right? The CPM is the value in which the advertisers pay to be seen. So it's an easy equation. We're not recreating something that's bigger or better or worse than anywhere else. The value that Inside Arm Wrestling has right now is that you can stick your sponsor into this broadcast. Matt, if you've got, let's say you've got Matt Straps or Lion Straps. Let's say Leo Landeros Lion Straps wants to put $100 behind this, this specific show, and you want to run a Lion Strap commercial during it. On our platform, you can. Tubi, Amazon, Pluto, any of those others automatically kicked off because they don't want you to compete with their advertising dollars. If your commercial play or your advertisers are what they call built to broadcast, meaning that it's inside the broadcast and not external to the broadcast, then you can promote your sponsors right here. So, and get paid. Now, on YouTube, if you hit the button, is this a paid sponsorship? That video now doesn't get paid because they're assuming you got paid already. They'll still run commercials in your show. They're just not going to pay you for it, right? On our platform, you can run your own commercials through your show as long as it's, it's blended into the podcast or to the show. And then you can also get paid for what the viewer sees in terms of commercial airtime. And listen, the more places you get put, the better, right? So this should be, for me, I can't pitch it any better to you guys, and this should be a no-brainer for you guys because you guys have hours and hours and hours of content. The only thing that it takes about, maybe 4 or 5 hours for us to give you a URL for you to upload all of your videos. And now you're on Inside Arm Wrestling. To me, this is an easy one, right? This is really one of the ones that are going to be a bit of a mystery if you don't want to get involved, because the more platforms you're on, the more money you can make, right? That's the bottom line. Not only that, you'll share in our revenue. So if we have sponsors that buy into our program at a greater rate, then you get a share of that as well. So it works on all ends. There's no loss for anyone to get inside arm wrestling. And we have a league that hasn't been around in a while that's going to give us content. And again, it's 70-30. It's not 65-35 for Matt and 75-25 for Jody. It's 70-30 through RSG, Ready, Set, Go distribution. It's a fixed number. We don't place fees on you guys. We're going to help you promote your channel, you promote your shows. It's a no-lose situation. And anyone who doesn't, it's certainly their choice, but I think it's kind of foolish because the 72 views and I get 72 views too from time to time. Sometimes I get hundreds of views, sometimes I get thousands of views. But YouTube will only allow you to go as much as a timeline and an algorithm, and they'll keep pushing you down. Here, people who go to the sports network want to find arm wrestling are going to find you, right? So this is an easy thing. You guys should be all on board on it. And certainly I'm more than happy to send you out the distribution agreement when we're done.
Absolutely.
and get you guys
please.
up onto
Fine
the
already.
URL. Hey, listen, we have a partnership that we're going to launch. It's with STEM Regen. Now, at the finals, they gave us about a little over $12,000 worth of product to give away to all the athletes. I'm currently taking STEM Regen. I'm on my third week. I took it for a month. I felt pretty good. I had a little bit of a break on it. I came back, and now I've got 3 months that I'm on it. I'm trying to document my growth on it, not in terms of physical growth, but like healing and stuff like that. So STEM Regen is giving all of our athletes an ability to become an affiliate, which is basically a sponsored athlete. And what that sponsorship is that, they will give you 20% back to all of the people inside your circle that buys the product from you as a commission. So if you sell, and it's stem cells, guys. That's all it is. It's a natural stem cell regeneration. It's medically proven. They've got a lot of research on it. But listen, if it's a $500 month supply versus a $5,000 one shot, you're going to make $100. If you go out there and you promote it and you get 5 people to buy over the course of a month, you made $500 just putting on your social media. This is a great way for you guys. And it's no different than being any other sponsored athlete that you go out and you put a code up and they're going to check and see how much volume and give you a check based upon volume. But here's the difference. STEM Regen has got some really good value that they're giving in terms of marketing. They're going to help you become a affiliate through us. And by doing that, we're going to be able to get you more money in your pocket just by putting your posts. Listen, you can run your podcast, Matt. Just run, hey, make sure you hit up STEM Regen if you need, your next month's supply, or put in the code, Matt, right? All of those things will help the sport grow. We've got several of those kind of relationships coming. 2 of the sponsors that we're about to sign will have, will become ambassadors for their product. Guys, I mean, we're going to continue to try to put more money and opportunity out there for everyone, and I think that's the key.
Absolutely.
So, anyone who wants to become and I didn't release it because we're just kind of doing some drops and stuff now, kind of tailor things to be more specific to arm wrestling. But man, these are ways for you to grow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. As you said, you'd be foolish not to take you up on that offer, and it's absolutely incredible. And as said at the start of the show, the things that you are doing for the world of arm wrestling is just astronomical, and so much growth is happening from the efforts and the contributions that you're making into the sport. Well,
and we're going to keep going. Listen, for me, I enjoy it. And maybe I'm a rare egg when it comes to that, but I really enjoy people being successful. It makes me happy to see people success in their lives, success in their marriages, success in their kids, success in their professional lives. I'm a big feeder on positivity. Now, I can be a real asshole at times. Now we're past that time where I can say that. But I mean, in the business world, I can be tough. I like to put an expectation upon myself, and I like to hold an expectation of others that are working around me. But success is predicated off of expectations. And there's an old saying in business that I use on a constant basis, and that you get 100% of what you inspect and never 100% of what you expect. So I'm constantly inspecting everything that we do to make sure it's doing it the right way. We're just not allowing things to go on a reactive basis. We're trying to be proactive. It's slower than most people might want it, but for us, it's more intuitively thought out to make sure we try to limit our errors. And we're always going to make errors, but how you mitigate that error risk formula is how you continue to grow in small steps, and that's really always been our calling card: small steps. And so they're just adding up now, right? That's the benefit.
Yeah, that's what's fun is that all of a sudden people will realize and go, "Oh, what's this World Series of Arm Wrestling thing?" It's like, is this new thing that's coming? It's like, no, they've been around for years, but yeah, as you said, it just takes a while to build up to the point where people actually see it.
And listen, one of the things that I think have been a competing factor for us not being as well known as maybe someone should think we should be is that we've kept our content pretty close to us, right? I mean, we haven't released it the day of. We haven't, we're not a play for share value where, we're cutting up clips into 17 different ways and nothing wrong with that. But the viewership is not consistent with us outside of our league times because ultimately we keep our content ready for distribution. And as a critiquing factor, and I can take the critique and the criticism, is that many would say that our social media platforms would be much larger than they are right now, which aren't very large at all, but they're growing, slow steps, small steps. But they'd be much larger if we did the formula that everybody else does. And that's, getting it out and making it so that it's seen regularly and consistently on.
Uh-oh.
Oh, give it a sec. We'll see if he comes back.
Oh, did he freeze up on us?
It's
He was about to get to an important part. He froze up on us.
That's an important point about what he said right there. Sorry, he's coming back. He's back. I've got him here. And there he is. All right.
I don't know where I left off. But, I think you guys were, that was the Chuck Barris time has expired. Pull me off the Gong Show and, Gregg's talking too much. But, I think that's also going to change again this year as we go to I was always saying that why we're not as socially as regularly seen as others. But I think that's going to change when we go to a live stream system. We're still going to edit for distribution on network channels. So, where the value will be in the creative approach, but we're going to get it live so that we can facilitate on the gambling stream as well. And I think that again is going to change the dynamic of our social media popularity. And let's call it what it is. We can go out and buy followers just like multiple people that call themselves social influencers do. But we don't need it. We want to be organic, right? I'd rather have 1,500 people following me that are constantly, engaging with us than to have 15,000 people following us that only 3 people are engaging with us. And if we concentrate on those organic growths, the popularity of the stream becomes better, and we'll be able to monetize that as well. What's the great thing about King of the Table and East versus West is let's call it what it is. Every million views, they make $4,300 or thereabouts, right? So if you have a value that you can put a number to a follow or a view, organically you want to grow, because if again you put 500,000 followers, and 3 of them are real, you're not going to translate out to real results. I get social media people following me and talking to me about being on shows all the time. The first thing I do is I go to their Instagram, I click on the reel, and I see how many people are actually engaging with them. And they got a 72-person view video, and they got 500,000 followers. I'm like, you might be shadow banned, but you haven't been shadow banned for 4 years, right? Or you go over to YouTube and you see, people with 60, 70, 80,000 followers, and they got 12 views. And I'm like, whoa, so I'd rather have 1,500.
They're not active.
Yeah, and listen, I can tell you this. In the world of social media, the biggest mistake I made, not even with World Series of Armwrestling, was when I left Explode Fight Series. I had 10,000 active followers. And I can tell you that because that was the algorithm. We got paid, several $1,000s a month for our fights. What happened, though, is that when Explode ended and I didn't want to continue it anymore and I wanted to watch my son and daughter grow up, we didn't facilitate it. And somebody came back to me and they said, you know what, if you put on one video a week for those 6 to 8 years and just kept it consistent or rotated, they said, YouTube would have built you up to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. And you would have a platform that had active people going. And that's the one thing I kicked myself over. But you know what? You can't change it. I can't go back. So we're just starting. We're starting like everybody else and continue to grow. And, I think we have 7,000 subscribers or something like that on YouTube. And we try to get it out there. And some videos, like I said, depending on the thumbnail and depending upon the hashtag and depending upon when you release it. And, we have a rubric, right? No video. There's nothing worse than when I get yelled at by Marisol on the social media and saying, Greg, why did you post? Why did you post season 3 this evening during the Ohio State-Oregon game? Why did you put it on your story, right? Because you know what? I'm hard-headed, right? You should have waited to Monday or Friday at 11 a.m. and then collaborated with 6 or 7 other people, and that reel would have had 2,000 views. And she does a great job growing it. I mean, our YouTube, or not YouTube, but our TikTok is growing. But it's all those little things count. But once I think we start with the Free Live Sports Inside Arm Wrestling channel, I think that all of those things change and change for the good, not just for us, but for Matt's and Jody's and everyone else, because we're going to find organically interested viewers that are going to tune into us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're 100% correct. And you do see it a lot with, especially Instagram, the amount of fake accounts that are out there is astronomical. But it is funny when you do notice that certain people that may have messaged you for advice or something like that, and then you go to their channel and you see maybe at the start they've only got 100 followers or something like that. And then within a month, they've suddenly got 100,000 followers. And then the next month it's 200,000. And then you look at the comments and the likes on their pictures and it's like 1 like or no comments anywhere. And it's like, well, this is obviously a fake following list that you've created here.
Yep.
Yeah. And listen, there, in the world of Hollywood and entertainment, we sift through that all the time. Even it's funny. I even look at my account when I post something about movies. Man, I'll tell you what, my stories have thousands and thousands and thousands of people viewing it. I put a pretty girl up there. I always say one of these days I'm gonna rat out all you guys that can't put a like on my post, but are putting like thumbs up and cares and hearts and all kinds of things on the stories. I got a Herbert Hoover, list behind me here that will maybe make a few guys think that maybe I need to put a like and a comment on Greg's post more often. But the answer is that people think that having more means better, and really I'd rather take again, that 2,500 to 10,000 follower or 500 follower type person and put them in a movie or put them in a show, because at least I know I'm going to get 500 views versus someone with 500,000 that got 3 people actively. Let's see. The YouTube comment section is hella infested with bots and repeats other people's comments. Like hundreds of likes, some from. Yeah, listen, the bots, you can't get away from bots. I'm going to tell you something. I sometimes my account, I'll wake up the next day and I'll be 500 more people on my account than I had the day before. And then I look to see if anybody's followed me, and nobody is in my follow section, right? I'm not seeing it. So they're getting, I don't know how they do it, right? I mean, and I'd rather have an organic number than an inorganic number, but it's a weird value. And sometimes that bot value is attaching, because what I found out is a lot of these companies will take what I'll call popular accounts, and they'll pitch the fact that, oh, see, we're following these popular accounts and they use you. And that's, I don't know. I mean, listen, it's a world that gets beyond me, and they're making money. I just, just don't ask me why I get so many of these hidden story values not alike at all. So
yeah, it can be very frustrating when you've got content. Say you film something and then it's like, okay, great, and you sit down on the computer, you've got your video there, and then it's like, because this is going to be hours of cutting, slicing, uploading, this, that. The actual editing doesn't take that long. It's all of the uploading and adding the thumbnail and the hashtags and this and the other thing, and linking it and sharing it there and posting it on 50 different sites. And that's the stuff that really takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to give you one more exclusive. Tell Me I'm the Greatest was a show that we started the first season of World Series of Armwrestling with Travis, and we filmed it, and it kind of got shelved. It got shelved for a couple of reasons, but at the end of the day, we have enough content to create an hour-long feature, which we're going to release here in 2025. So, if you want to see some fun shenanigans and some really interesting life story of Travis, and I'm not using Travis to pitch anything because he's part of the show, and he knows the show's being edited at this point. But if you want to watch a fun show in 2025, that is going to be really just a great entertainment value, and people are going to talk about it. I'm sure they're going to make memes about it and have some fun with it. But Tell Me I'm the Greatest is coming out. It will. I don't know if we're going to premiere it somewhere, but maybe we'll just maybe we'll premiere it on your guys' show. We'll play it. We'll play it live. Why not? But that's another a fun one that's happening.
Wow, that's absolutely huge news. Yeah, I mean, Travis Pagent, my first experience of anything with arm wrestling was the Pulling John documentary, which obviously Travis was a big key feature in the success of that, as such a charismatic, funny, interesting, crazy character. He is one of those guys that Ryan Bowen said that when he spent some time with Travis in his state of West Virginia, that every single person knew Travis, and they'd go into any shop, no matter where they went into, the people would be like, "Hey, Travis," and he's like, "Hey, yo, my man, what's going on with it?" So he is definitely a character for sure, and to get an hour-long feature of some of the crazy things that he gets up to would be absolutely amazing.
Well, let me tell you something. Even though I really enjoy watching Ryan arm wrestle and watching his cast, I don't think he realizes there's only about 12 people in Martinsburg, West Virginia. So, we shot there, so I would know. I mean, I'd say, "My man, let me get over here and let me show you what's going on at the barbershop." And then, it's like, but maybe I should. I don't know Ryan personally. I've met him twice. A very nice guy. And honestly, I really, it's interesting. I love to tell stories. I love to tell asides. When Ryan Bowen first came out on the scene, I was thoroughly impressed with Ryan, not because of his strength or, I was more impressed because of his acumen on the table. He was a great student of the game, and really a super match. He was really made for the super match in many ways, because he was very adaptable on the table. He was very strategic. I was at LA, I think it was Wall in LA. I don't remember who he pulled. It might have been Alex Top Roll. But
he pulled Alan Guerrera.
Oh yes. And before the match, I said, this is going to be a match where Ryan's probably going to drop the first match, but then he's going to make an adjustment, and then he's going to dominate, and he's going to keep adjusting, and he's going to keep Alan guessing. And he did. And I think the reality of Ryan is he's got a lot of table acumen that makes him a very astute puller. It would be great. And listen, Lackland is a monster. I'm going to tell you two things I saw at King of the Table that you don't see on any other arm wrestling event anywhere in the world that I've seen. Number one is Lackland is like a cyborg, and from the hips down, he's got legs the size of fullbacks and linebackers. So the fact that guy is so strong in the upper body and is at the weight he is, I can't imagine what he would look like if he was the typical arm wrestler with just upper body strength and no legs. That guy is a beast. And secondly is Eddie Hall has maybe the largest calves on any human being that I've ever seen that are actually actively and to me, that kind of table acumen is hard to beat. Impressive. But what has kept Ryan from maybe growing to the highest levels? What do you think that is, if I can ask you, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, when the sport here in Australia is growing, but it is not at the level that it is with Europe, and it definitely isn't the level that it is with North America. Those two parts of the world have a very established and rich history, and plus the population that's there as well is far greater than what we have here in Australia. There's only 25 million people here in the whole country, and you think, well, what percentage of those are into arm wrestling? And overall, I think we'd probably have around 250 people in the entire country that are into arm wrestling that do it regularly. So, our national event would get maybe around 100 entrants. But yet it can be very difficult to grow if you become the number one guy, and it's like, well, who am I training with? I'm training with people that are not as good as I am, so I'm trying to improve my skill set, and iron sharpens iron. It's the same thing with any competitive environment. When if you're working with somebody that's just that little bit better than you, it drives you to try to get better, to try to match them, to try to increase your skills, and then they might feel the same pressure, like, oh, this guy's catching up to me, so I need to improve as well. And what ends up sort of happening is that you're both actually improving at the same time, and it might feel like you haven't improved at all, but the reality is that you've gone up several levels, but the person you're training with also has gone up several levels, so you might feel very stagnant. But the more people that get involved in the sport of arm wrestling, the more people that especially in the super heavyweight class, or the big, powerful, strong guys that can really give people a challenge at every level of the sport, from the beginners right through to the number one people in the country, that's where you're going to find the best growth. And it's still an up-and-coming, rising sport here in Australia. So, yeah, I know that Ryan has definitely benefited from going around the world and competing in different countries, Ireland, in America, in India, in all sorts of different locations, and feeling different strengths and different training methods, and all of those ideas that he gets to come back and sort of start to implement those things himself. But in terms of actually working weekly with somebody that's as good or similar to you, or maybe just a little bit stronger, that's where you're going to find your best results. And when you're the top guy, it can be very difficult to continue to improve.
Hey guys, I hate to be that guy, but I gotta sign out. So Matt, thanks for having me on the show. Greg, it's always good to talk to you, my friend, and I will check you guys out sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Jody, good to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of those things. So, yeah, Rickard Bornman, the young South African super heavyweight that has become a bit of a sensation over here, is one of the best things that's happened for us in terms of arm wrestling for Australia. Having a young man, he's only 20 years old, and being so new to the sport. I think he's just over a year and a half in at this point. but doing so well and being so strong and so powerful. And he's in that questionable point right now where people are saying, well, is he the number one in the country of Australia? And we haven't been able to prove that or see the result of that, with Lachlan Adair being restricted with a contract with Core Sports. But there is that question mark, and to have somebody that is up and coming, that can sort of challenge Lachlan, challenge Ryan, challenge these top guys, and especially at a young age, it gives that future superstardom to be like, well, this could be the next generation of people that start getting involved in the sport of arm wrestling. And so I know Lachlan is very, very excited to have somebody like Rickard, especially to be able to train with him every week. And they are not only improving each other's skills, but they're also improving their chances of doing better in the overseas markets.
I agree. I appreciate you saying that. I'd love to see those guys travel. I'd love to see them get out and listen. It all comes out to money, right? At the end of the day, if we're all independently wealthy, we could do whatever we wanted and travel wherever we want and get better. And ultimately, that's the goal, right? It's to try to make arm wrestling a professional sport, a sport that can, sustain you as an athlete from a very young age to a very old age and give you a way to create a living. But a guy like Ryan, I would love to see him travel again and get a different value of growth. I'd love to see Lachlan do it as well, and Ricky and all those guys. I just think that it's important. And it also gives us a value too, because, changing ideas, being able to sit and talk around a couple-hour practice, on what you're doing or what we're doing. I just started to train back. I mean, and again, I'm not looking, I have no pity parties in life at 54. The sun got me. I had cancer cut out, gone through some treatments. I'm happy to be back training in a little bit more aspect of being aggressively training. But I watched a guy with bands the other day, and he had two bands stretched out, and he was doing pronation and supination with just bands. And I was like, wow. So I put it in my gym, and all of a sudden I went out and I started going like this and that, and it got tension under there, and I could hold it. And I was like, wow, I'm actually feeling that. And so just the exchanging of ideas and exercises is just so immensely important. That just that one thing. I mean, will it help me win an extra match this year? I don't know. Maybe. I don't, but the fact that I'm training and I feel stronger, and just in my daily routine because of that, it was extremely helpful. But
well, that's one of those things that I found with our club here in South Australia as well, because it's still it's about 11 years we've been running it now. I've been involved for 6 years, but the people who were there prior to me have either moved on to something else or they're still there. But it's sort of those people have really sort of dwindled down to maybe a couple. And I would be one of the most experienced people there. And I'm not at the elite level. I'm not at the top level. I'm definitely not at a national championship level. But the people that are coming into the club and enjoying themselves and training, it's like, well, I can get to them to a certain point, but my knowledge, my skill set is only going to get to a certain level before it's like, if you want to continue to get better, I have exhausted my knowledge here, and my skill is not at the point where you're going to continue to get better learning from me. So maybe at that point, hopefully we will continue to get more and more people into the club, so we can build a network of people that do help everyone improve. And you do get those people that shoot way past me, and there's a lot of people in the club that are better than me already, which is great. And but we do have other clubs around the country, and even just a quick visit over to another state and doing a training session with somebody in Melbourne or somebody over in Brisbane or in Sydney. And it's like, they come back with this renewed vigor for, it's like, because they got smashed. Like the people over there are a lot higher level. And it's like, you might go over there thinking, oh yeah, I destroy everyone in Adelaide. Yeah, I'll be fine. And you go in and get destroyed. Like you are the weakest person in the room, And it's like, oh, okay, I realize what the levels are now. And that's how I felt going everywhere. But it's great when you see the people who are at the absolute elite level, and just being able to get on the table with some of these guys, because it's like, I just want to know what that feels like. I just want to know, like, how strong is Ron Barth? Like, just let me feel that. I just want to feel his arm for a second, and you're like, all right, I can't move it at all. That's all I wanted.
And listen, that's the best. That's the best thing about being the CEO of World Series of Arm Wrestling is that I get to do what you want to do. Now, I'm never going to move these guys, right? The talent level that we have on all of our own platforms is immense. But to actually be able to stand up and get on a table and get in front of someone and just feel how incredibly strong they are, it's just like, holy shit! It's like, this is how did you get here? A guy like Adam Warinsky, he engages in that bicep, and he's maybe, I'll tell you what, he might be the coolest cat on the table that I've ever seen. He just sits there like this, and expressionless, and he engages, and it's fun to watch. But to actually grip up with the guy and feel the thickness in his hand, just shaking hands before a tournament, it's like, I can't beat that guy. Well, can't beat that guy. No, can't beat that guy. How the hell am I even going to close my hand on that guy, right? Grabbing Corey West's hand, it's like, it's just, I wouldn't, you don't have a chance to either cap or no cap when it's Corey West, right? Because his hand is so damn big that you can't get your fingers around to get over your thumb, right? You actually have to come around, and so there's, how do you cap on a guy like that? Well, you can have Bill Collins, and he can start ratcheting it in for you, but it ain't gonna, you can't get there. So, and Ron Bass hand, there's, when you talk about hands and levels, and the funny thing is, as I go through life, I shake people's hands all the time in everything I do. And sometimes somebody astounds me in a field, and I grab their hand and go, whoa. I go, you got a big hand. I go, have you ever arm wrestled? And they go, I always arm wrestled when I was a kid. Nobody ever beat me. And I said, oh, yeah, I hear that all the time. But you could see that his hand was so big, and it would dwarf. And I don't have a bad size hand. I just don't have a ginormous hand. But you think to yourself, God, these guys out there that don't even realize that they have arm wrestling potential. And then it renews my thought of why we're doing World Series of Arm Wrestling, because if these guys, when they were kids, knew about arm wrestling and there was a sport that they could actually gotten better at, I mean, a guy that has a hand as big as Alan Fisher or bigger, right? They're out there. I've seen guys do crazy strong things with hands and wrists that are thick as a brick, but never would, never arm wrestling. They always would say, yeah, I don't want to hurt my bicep, or I don't want to, break my arm. I go, dude, man, nobody's breaking your arm. Maybe with a bat they'd break your arm, but other than that, I mean, you got an arm that looks like most people's thighs. But I think if we do our job, right, and that is to get the answers out to people outside of who we are, we'll find those young kids. We'll inspire them. We've got a couple of things going on with local schools this year, just locally here, getting into the high schools, doing some seminars for free, introducing arm wrestling to them. All those little things happen and help, and that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the speakers on your end may be a little bit loud. If you just turn them down a little bit, I'm just getting an echo every now and then.
I'm hard of hearing. I'm a little bit older. How's that? Better?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, because I think every time we would start to speak, we'd get a bit of an echo, but then it would go away. But that's perfect now, how it is. But yes, I've done the school visits, and the kids loved it. And I did have to say, like, several times, look, guys, like, you're having fun doing this. I said, but don't go out at lunch and recess and do it. But you don't know how to do it properly yet. The last thing we want is
right. No, exactly. And that's 100% accurate. Whenever we go out to the schools or the Marines or wherever we're going, we preface to the guys and go, listen, this is just to introduce you to the sport. Your next step is to go find a practice, right? And here's some local practices where you can go out and you can practice in a safe environment. and get better. Don't be arm wrestling your buddies on the cafeteria tables. That's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely, every single time. And that's the last thing that you'd want to hear. And of course, if somebody does get an arm break, that's a year of they're in a cast for 6 weeks, and anybody who's got a cast, it's like, how'd you break your arm? Oh, in arm wrestling. Okay. And then they tell somebody else, and they tell the trickle effect. And then they get the big scar down the back of the elbow, and it's like everyone for the rest of their life, how'd you get that big scar? Oh, it's arm wrestling. And it's like, that stupid idea that it's not a safe sport gets out there because people who didn't know how to do it properly got injured.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the hard thing about the sport, right? I mean, if for every one arm wrestler we find that we can translate into, a team member who may go to a tournament and maybe stay with it for more than a year, there's 100 other people that will tell him and everybody else that the sport's dangerous, the sport's not, worth it. You're going to get hurt. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do in life. And we have to get beyond that, right? And even educating people, they say, oh, how many arm breaks? And knock on wood, we don't usually see a lot of arm breaks in our sport. What do we see? We see bicep tears, tricep delts, chest pec blowouts, things that are all muscle development issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or lack of development or overdevelopment, right? Some, blowing out a bicep is not because you're not strong. It's because either maybe it's overworked, it got into a bad position. It's just inherently weak at that point. There's a lot of variables. It's not because you got your arm outside your shoulder and you're about to break your arm. We can see that, but when you're setting up, how do you know that your bicep isn't fatigued to the point where the guy in front of you is going to put stress in the right lane and pop it, and watch it curl up. That's more typical to our sport than anything else. It's not arm breaks. It's guys with micro tears. Even a micro tear takes us months to come back.
Yeah, that's it is frustrating though. When you do, you start to speak to somebody you've just met, and they say, "What do you do?" or whatever, and the conversation always sort of leads to arm wrestling, or I make it go there. But it's always that. Oh, I've seen a lot of the arm break videos online, and it's always that frustration because it's like those videos that you've seen, they're always the kitchen table arm wrestling video with like an older brother versus his like twig sister, and they're on like the edge of a table just doing pure side pressure, and it's like that's not a proper arm wrestling. That's not how you do it. That's
right.
So frustrating.
I listen. We both live that. We both live that life. Education of the sport, and trying to get through to people for them to understand that that's not what we're about. But it's that and slap fighting. Oh, you're a slap fighter? No, I'm not a slap fighter.
I don't know where the correlation comes in. Maybe the only thing I can think of is that both people are standing at a table. That's the only thing that's similar. But I get that as well. Like I start talking about arm wrestling, it either goes, oh yeah, I've seen that. There's some Canadian guy that does arm wrestling. He's a tall Canadian guy. I don't know what his name is. Like Devin Larratt. They're like, yeah, him. And they're like, okay, great. And then it'll be, have you seen slap fighting? And it's like, how did you go from there to there?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. No, it's like, listen, I always have a great time with you, Matt. And I have to wrap up a little bit only because I've got to get some stuff out before we start business tomorrow. Yeah. But again, apologies for Friday's mishap on my end. I try not to make that happen again. I can't guarantee it, but I'm older, I'm wiser. And I'm going to write it on my hand this time, so I have to look at it. And then the other thing is, I really would love for you to get with me here after today, before the weekend. Let's see if we can package up Matt Connelly's podcast. Let's get him out on Inside Arm Wrestling. Let's get some sponsors looking at this, and let's see if we can do some fun content with you that can help help build on your end and help the sport build, and and hopefully we all win with it, right?
It sounds absolutely like a dream come true to me, my friend. And so we will wrap things up. Gregg Sharp of World Series of Arm Wrestling. Where can people find you, Gregg?
Well, the easiest place is at Instagram. It's a long word. It's world_sport_of_arm wrestling. Follow us there first. That's the first and foremost. The underscores are bothering me too, but that's all right. That's what we have. Or Gregg XFS on Instagram, and then I can always direct you to World Series. And then on Facebook and YouTube, World Series of Arm Wrestling and Garage to Fitness. So those are the parent company of World Series of Arm Wrestling is Garage to Fitness LLC. So if you see Garage to Fitness or G2F and wonder why that's there, that's our LLC. We do business as DBA World Series of Arm Wrestling. So those are places where you can find us. The more we have following us and clicking the likes and subscribes and notifies and follows, the better. And certainly the same, my viewers, please make sure you're following Matt Connelly and all his pages. That's important. It's the one thing we can do as an industry that positively affects us all, that costs us nothing to do. And that's to hit a like, a follow, or a subscribe button. And uniquely, if we all did it, and the sport itself would have an even better value when we go out to the sponsors, because they would see that there's a camaraderie and really a partisanship of followers that will follow the industry no matter where it goes.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. So thank you so much again, Gregg, for jumping on the show. It's Gregg Sharp, World Series of Arm Wrestling. Go check it out. You saw it. I brought it up the Instagram a second ago. It came up after I put the _world and then _ and then it was right there. So you don't have to type the whole thing. If you're an arm wrestling fan, I'm sure that it will pop up for you. And if you're not an arm wrestling fan, it won't. So you have to write the whole thing. So
we promise to make it easier in the future. How about that?
Oh, fantastic. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will end the stream there.